what I want to do is I want to go through the elicitation with him. And we're going to keep it very simple, the same one I asked you to use. So the advantage we have is that you've now had an experience of the exercise, right? Mm-hmm. And let's go back for a second and say that I want to re-ask this question that I had actually started with. And the question I had started with was, what desire or expectation do you have about what you'd like to be getting from these couple of days together?
Well, I think it's about getting more of a skill set, so I eventually can use it more conversational. So it's a practicing, it's a training for skills.
Okay. And when you say use it more conversationally, give me an example of like what settings that might be useful in.
Coaching and also training in groups.
Okay. Now, here's two things you want to pay attention to. When you're doing elicitation, there are always going to be two parts to the elicitation. There's the content piece, which is what he's saying. There's also what I'm going to call the contextual piece, is what he's doing as he's saying it. Now, he's already done a couple of things in front of me that give me information about what that means. And this is going to allow me to build what I'm going to do around utilization. One of the things that's going to be extremely useful is making things specific. So now there's a very particular question that I can always use in elicitation to do that. You've heard me actually use it a number of times already today. I'm going to use it here so that you hear the language of it. It's remarkably simple. So have you ever done that before?
Yeah.
So can you tell me a bit about where you've done it before?
Yeah, I've done it in my previous jobs. Mm-hmm. There was some colleagues doing recruitment. I did a training session about body language and question techniques. Mm-hmm. So, and doing a full day. So modeling a bit of Henrik's work with what we want. I did some questioning around the room and then beginning to tell them what I was doing and asking them if they saw what I was doing.
Okay. Okay. And when you did it that way, how did that go?
Well.
All right.
A lot of good feedback and also good sensation to me.
Okay. And at what point did you know you were getting the information you wanted?
When I saw the curious looks and the aha expression, like all these.
I'm getting him to the point where he's accessing that specific experience. Now, if you notice, I asked, I don't know, 3 or 4 questions there. If he has a reference, I want that reference to be present so we can work with the reference. Because in essence, if you could have that experience as the baseline of how you operate with people all the time, if that was always present, would you be closer to how you want to be operating with people?
Yeah.
Okay? See, this is what, in essence, you could say, as a client, he wants to leave the interaction with, is more of that. However, once I've gathered the information that I'm going to feed back in, it becomes directive. The client wants to get somewhere as a result of the work we're doing together. Does that make sense? Or I want to get the client somewhere as a result of the work we're doing together. And we can talk about those different kinds of situations where you're going to leave it to the client to create the direction, or you're going to bring the direction to the client. So for instance, there's some cases where I really come in a consulting role. And part of the role that I come in with when I'm consulting is in essence to bring to the client where they need to go or could go, which furthers the generalized outcome they want. So they have a general outcome, and I'm bringing specific expertise. How do you get to that general outcome? One of the great myths that I'd like you to get rid of, if you have it, is the idea that the client has all the resources they need. My absolute presumption is the reason they're sitting with me is because they don't have the resources they need. If they had all the resources they need, why the heck are they paying me and wasting their time and mine? You get that? What we could say is that the client has all the resources they need to learn what they need to know to do what they need to do. That I would accept. Those are learning resources. And you may have to help them get to those resources. But they may not have the knowledge, the expertise, the skill set resources that they need. Those they may need to add in, and they may need to come from the outside. You get that? Are we working with his ability to access resources that are present but unavailable to him when and how he wants them to be available? Are we working with resources that he doesn't yet have that I'm going to introduce because I bring a certain skill set or expertise along with me to the interaction we're going to have? Or am I bringing a skill set around how to go out and get resources he doesn't yet have from where they might be present out in the world somewhere else, but that I don't have either? Does that make sense? Because the presumption we're working from is that he has an outcome that he wants to attain, he wants to realize, and that that outcome, in order to be realized, will require resources, and they have to be present before the outcome will be realized. Is that a reasonable presumption on my part? So what you said is you want to be able to use more of these conversational hypnotic forms when you're working with clients, like in coaching.
Yeah.
And you've actually had that happen, so you know what it's like.
Well, sort of only when a specific planned sessions or modules, if you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's presume for a moment that you actually had all those skills in place, that you could do all of that. What would that be getting you? Why do you want that?
I will be able to help people develop and change more quickly, elegant, and profoundly. So that would be nice.
I'm going to say, you remember what it was like when you were just thinking about what it would be like to have this skill set. And I want you to put your attention there in that location. And I want you to allow yourself to go all the way into that idea of what it would be like to have these skills. Imagining yourself so fully that it goes past what it would be like as an imagination to the idea of what it would be like as a memory. And allow yourself to just relax so much so that the memory begins to become more and more real for you until you begin to have the sense that that's actually what's been going on for longer than you can remember. And as you do that, continue to relax your body as well, because you can relax yourself into a state where the memory becomes more real than what's actually been going on up until now. And I want you, in the next 2 or 3 breaths, to have relaxed yourself so much so that all you think about on the inside is what it will be like to have already done this. And you may even notice that your eyes get tired and want to close of their own accord. And you can close them if you like, so you can put more of your attention on the inside, and there's less distraction about what's going on here on the outside. Because the less distraction you have, the more you can put your attention on yourself and what it is you want to be accomplishing as you begin to move forward with a different set of skills than you've ever had access to before. Now, of course, I know that you've seen these skills in others, and you've even been able to mimic and model those skills in a way that's been useful to you, here and there, on one occasion or another. And you know what it's like to be incredibly skillful in terms of watching others do this work at a level that you'd like to emulate, model, become proficient at yourself. And that goes from the idea of what it would be like as an imagination to what it's like now as living the memory that you've begun to have, even as I'm speaking these words into you. The idea of what it is to be conversational with somebody in such a way that without them really even noticing when the transition occurred, they'd entered into an altered state of incredibly highly qualified learning. Because this is all about your learning this now rather than later. Because sooner in some cases, in fact, definitely better than taking longer than you need to. Because I'd say, why should it take any longer than it has to for you to get everything you want? Because that's in fact what would be most useful for the client you'll be working with as well. And what you've learned at this level of skill, how to do it for yourself, it will be so much easier for you to do it for anyone else as well. And now that that position has moved from one side of your mind to the other where memory is stored, you understand you're no longer thinking about it as an imagination, but something that's already happened. You see, there's something that can be going on where you begin to move through the world. And moving through the world has a certain movement to it. And I want you to take the time now to know what the very next thing that you need to take the very next step that you'll take will be. And only when you know what that step is, that particular thing that would make all the difference as the next thing for you to be doing is, and only when you have that, only when you've done that, only when you've taken the time that you need to do it all, just the next step, do I want you to come back in full awareness, bringing it with you as the thing to be putting all of your attention on in that focused and precise way, so that you can gain the skills as quickly as possible, just one step at a time. So what was that like?
That was good. That especially when you told me to focus and be quiet in my head, that was done the trick for me.
Okay. So when I ask you to think about what the next step is, what's the next step?